Dusk spread its soft shadows over the field as Amanda and David, a couple who had spent more springs together than they could count, made their way back to the tranquility of their farm after an afternoon of shopping in the neighboring town. The air was fresh, carrying with it the scent of damp earth after a light rain, and the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, promising a calm night. As they approached the wooden gate that marked the entrance to their property, a soft sound, almost lost amidst the noise of the tires on the gravel, caught Amanda's attention. She asked David, who was driving with his usual calm demeanor, to stop the car. "David, did you hear that?" she asked, a hint of concern in her voice. David turned off the engine and listened. A faint, but persistent cry floated through the air. Together, they got out of the vehicle, their eyes following the direction of the sound to a beam of light escaping through the bushes beside the gate. There, in a wicker basket covered by a simple, faded blanket, lay the source of the cry, a baby. Amanda did not hesitate. She quickly approached, her eyes wide with surprise and her heart touched by a maternal impulse that had never been fulfilled by the children they could never have. She carefully lifted the blanket, revealing a peaceful face despite the tears. The baby stopped crying as soon as it felt the warmth of her hands, fixing its small eyes on her as if recognizing a guardian angel. "Oh, David, come see," she called, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and disbelief. David, moving more slowly, joined her, looking at the tiny creature with an expression of awe. He ran his hand through his white hair and looked at Amanda, seeing not just the reflection of the twilight light on her face, but an inner light of renewed hope and love. Amanda, holding the baby with great care, turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "David, look at him. Could we?" Her voice faltered, leaving the question hanging in the air, laden with years of unrealized dreams. David, whose eyes were also moist, looked at Amanda, then at the baby, and finally at the vast field stretching out before them, a symbol of all the possibilities life could still offer. He placed his hand over hers, which still held the basket, and nodded. "Yes, Amanda, we can. Let's take him home." Together, with steps mixing hesitation and determination, they carried the baby into their home, crossing the threshold of a new life that began at that very moment. As soon as they entered, the door behind them closed softly, as if destiny itself had decided to seal this unexpected encounter. And it was there, with the night falling over the farm and the silence welcoming new promises, that a new story began for Amanda, David, and the little being they had found. Filled with mystery and hope, it began as they, still unaware, approached revelations that would test their newfound happiness. Amanda and David's house, usually a sanctuary of calm and routine, now seemed to pulse with the new and unexpected energy that a baby's presence brings. While David turned on the lights and Amanda gently placed the basket on the kitchen table, the comfortable silence of their home was filled with the small sounds of movement and life. Amanda, still holding the baby with one hand, began to rummage through the basket with the other, adjusting the blanket. It was then that she noticed something unusual, a folded letter hidden beneath the fabric. With trembling hands, she retrieved the envelope and opened it slowly, aware that the words written inside could change everything again. David, noticing his wife's hesitation, approached. "What is it, Amanda? What does it say?" She carefully unfolded the paper, and her eyes began to scan the hurried lines. The letter was from a young girl, just 16 years old, who narrated with words full of despair and resignation the story of her abandonment and painful decision. The girl explained that the child's father had disappeared upon learning of the pregnancy and that she, unable to face the shame and fear of reprisals from her own family, opted to leave the baby in the care of strangers, hoping he would have a better life. Amanda's voice trembled as she read aloud to David. She says here, "Please forgive my cowardice and take care of him. I also leave the choice of his name to you, as I do not have that right." Amanda's voice broke, and she had to pause, taking a deep breath to continue. She ends by saying, "I hope that one day he can understand and forgive me." David, listening to every word, felt a mix of sadness and compassion for the absent mother. He hugged Amanda for a moment, seeking to comfort her. It's a brave and yet desperate decision. Poor girl, poor child. After a few moments of silence, sharing the heavy burden of the letter's words, David looked at the baby, who was now sleeping peacefully in a corner of the basket. "What should we name him?" he asked, trying to add some lightness to the weight of the moment. Amanda looked at the serene face of the baby, thinking about all the possibilities this little being had ahead. "Ryan," she said finally, with a certainty that surprised even herself. "Let's call him Ryan. We chose that name years ago. If we had a son." David nodded, smiling sadly. "Ryan," he repeated, as if testing the name in the air. "Welcome to the family, Ryan." With the name chosen and the letter now kept as a silent reminder of the circumstances that led them to that night, Amanda and David felt strangely complete. Life had, in an unexpected way, filled a void they hadn't even known could be filled. As they placed Ryan back in his cozy basket, ensuring he was comfortable and safe, Amanda and David exchanged a look of complicity and hope. The night advanced, and as the moon shone through the kitchen window, they knew that the dawn would bring more than just sunlight. It would bring a new routine into their lives, one they were ready to begin with love and dedication. As the seasons changed, the leaves on the trees in Amanda and David's farmhouse backyard would change color and fall, marking the passing of years as clearly as the deepening lines on their faces. Ryan, the boy found by the roadside, now ran through those same fields, tall and strong, with the same sparkle in his eyes he had as a baby. Amanda and David, though aging, seemed to rejuvenate with the energy and joy that Ryan brought to the house. The boy grew up under their attentive and loving care, treated as if he were their own flesh and blood. However, beneath the surface of this happy family lay a secret, kept in the bottom of a locked drawer in David's office, the letter from Ryan's biological mother. One quiet afternoon, as Ryan helped David in the garden, Amanda watched from the kitchen window. Her heart filled with love and a twinge of concern seeing him so grown up. "Do you think we should tell him about?" Her hesitant voice broke the kitchen silence as she prepared tea. David entered, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. "I think about it every day, Amanda. But how do we start that conversation? Ryan, you were left at our doorstep, and here's a letter from your real mother? It would change everything for him." Amanda poured the tea, considering David's words. "But he has the right to know where he came from. Maybe it will complete him in some way." David nodded, knowing Amanda was right, but the fear of losing the special bond they had with Ryan was palpable. Maybe at the right time, when he's ready to understand. The following years were a mix of everyday moments and celebrations. Birthdays, school events, and small victories were shared with all the intensity of a united family. Ryan, in turn, became increasingly curious about the world and himself. On his 17th birthday, Ryan was in his room, looking at the stars through his telescope, a passion David had carefully encouraged. Amanda knocked gently on the door. "Can I come in?" she asked, holding a small birthday cake. "Of course, Mom," Ryan replied, with a smile that lit up the room. Amanda placed the cake on the table and sat beside him. "Ryan, have you thought about your future? About what you want to do?" Ryan looked outside at the starry sky, then back at Amanda. "Sometimes I wonder about who I really am. I mean, I know who my parents are, you and Dad, but is there something more about me that I should know?" The question took Amanda by surprise, but she remained calm. "What makes you think that?" "I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like there's something more. Something you haven't told me." Amanda felt the weight of that moment, knowing that the truth about Ryan's origin could no longer be postponed. She touched his hand, preparing for what might be the hardest conversation of their lives. "Ryan, there's something we need to talk about. It's about your origins, about how you came to be with us." Amanda's words hung in the air, laden with meaning and unspoken emotions. Ryan looked at her, his eyes full of questions. The revelation promised to be a turning point in their lives, a moment they knew would come but always feared. As night fell over the small farm, the soft lights of Amanda and David's kitchen shone invitingly through the windows. Inside, the aroma of fresh herbs and roasts filled the air, while Ryan, now a 17-year-old young man, was putting the finishing touches on a dinner he had prepared himself. It was a special occasion, the first time he would introduce his girlfriend, Samantha, to his parents. "Do you think they'll like me?" Samantha asked nervously, adjusting her dress and looking at Ryan with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Ryan smiled, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "Of course they will. They'll love you. Just relax and be yourself." David and Amanda entered the kitchen, smiling as they saw the young couple so clearly nervous but radiant. "Hello, Samantha. It's a pleasure to finally meet you," Amanda said, extending her hand in a warm welcome. David followed, offering a firm handshake. "Thank you, Mrs. Amanda, Mr. David. Ryan has told me a lot about you," Samantha replied, her eyes taking in the familiar and cozy environment. Dinner was served on a table carefully set by Ryan, with dishes that reflected his recently honed culinary skills. They started with a fresh salad, followed by lasagna with bolognese sauce, and for dessert, a homemade apple pie. Between bites and laughter, dinner unfolded smoothly. David and Amanda asked Samantha about school, her hobbies, and her family, while Samantha shared stories from her childhood and her plans for the future. "So, Samantha, what do you plan to do after school?" David asked, interested. "I hope to study biology. I dream of becoming a researcher," she replied, her eyes shining with the enthusiasm of her dreams. Amanda smiled encouragingly. "That's wonderful. It's always good to have a passion." As the conversation flowed, Ryan occasionally glanced at Samantha with evident affection, but also with a shadow of worry that only he seemed to notice. Sensing his gaze, Samantha squeezed his hand under the table, a silent promise of mutual support. As the dishes were cleared and dessert was served, the light atmosphere began to be permeated by a subtle tension. Ryan took a deep breath, exchanging a meaningful look with Samantha before speaking. "Mom, Dad, we have something important to tell you," Ryan began, his voice a bit firmer than usual. David and Amanda exchanged worried but welcoming glances, ready to hear what their hearts had already begun to suspect. The revelation that followed promised to be a decisive moment, one that would change the family dynamic forever. It was the beginning of a new understanding, where hidden truths would come to light and test the bonds that held them together. As the seasons changed, bringing with them the freshness of autumn followed by the white mantle of winter, a secret grew in Samantha's heart, equally transformative and imposing. It was on a cold February afternoon that she sat beside Ryan in the small park where they often met, a place that, despite the season, maintained its tranquil beauty. Samantha held Ryan's hands, seeking in him the support for the words she needed to say. "Ryan, I need to tell you something important," Samantha began, with a hesitation that made her heart beat faster. Ryan, sensing the seriousness of the moment, gently squeezed her hands. "What is it, Sam? You can tell me anything." Samantha took a deep breath, looking into his eyes, searching for courage. "I'm pregnant, Ryan." The world seemed to stop for a moment for Ryan. He blinked, processing the words, their weight descending on him like the snow on the branches of the surrounding trees. "Pregnant," he repeated, his voice almost a whisper. "Yes," Samantha confirmed, watching every change in his expression, trying to predict his complete reaction. Ryan ran his hand through his hair, looking at the ground covered with dry leaves before looking back at her. "Wow, that's big, Sam." Samantha squeezed his hands once more. "I know it's a surprise, and I understand if you need time to process this." Ryan shook his head, a mix of fear and excitement passing through his thoughts. "No, it's not that. I'm surprised, of course, but we'll get through this together. I'm just worried about what my parents will think." She smiled slightly, a look of relief crossing her face. "I was thinking we could tell them together. Maybe they can advise us, help us somehow." Ryan nodded, still absorbing the reality of becoming a father so young. "I know they'll support us, Sam. They raised me to be responsible. Let's talk to them. When do you want to do it?" "The sooner the better. I don't want this to stay between us as a secret for too long." Agreeing, Ryan held her hand as they walked back to the car, each step bringing them closer to a new reality that would demand more from them than they ever expected. A few days later, with hearts heavy with nervousness and anticipation, Ryan and Samantha met in the kitchen of Amanda and David's farmhouse, the same place where months ago they had shared laughter and stories. Now, the atmosphere was charged with palpable tension, both young people preparing to change the family dynamic forever. "Mom, Dad," Ryan began, his voice firm, but his hand holding Samantha's under the table. "We have something important to tell you." David and Amanda exchanged worried looks, the silence stretching a bit before Amanda encouraged, "You can tell us anything, Ryan." The revelation was about to be made, a moment that would define many others to come. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would bring challenges, but also the promise of new beginnings. In Amanda and David's carefully arranged living room, the two families gathered, creating an atmosphere of palpable expectation. Samantha's parents, though seemingly calm, exchanged worried glances, while Amanda and David sat side by side, holding hands in a silent gesture of mutual support. Ryan and Samantha also held hands, the anxiety clear on their young faces. "We want to thank you all for coming today," Ryan began, his voice trembling slightly with the tension of the moment. "We have something important to share with you." Samantha squeezed Ryan's hand, encouraging him with a look before taking the initiative. "I'm pregnant," she said simply, her voice steady despite the evident nervousness. The ensuing silence was almost deafening. All eyes turned to the young couple, emotions ranging from surprise to consternation. Samantha's mother, Marie, was the first to break the silence. "Pregnant?" Her voice was louder than she intended. "Samantha, you're so young. And Ryan, this is too much responsibility for you both." David, always the peacemaker, tried to smooth things over. "Yes, it's a big responsibility, but we're here to support them. They won't be alone in this." Amanda nodded, her expression maternal. "We'll help with whatever is needed. Ryan and Samantha are intelligent and capable. With the right support, they can face this." Samantha's father, Thomas, crossed his arms, his gaze shifting between the young couple and his own shoes. "This changes everything, doesn't it? Did you two plan this?" Ryan felt a surge of defensiveness. "It wasn't planned, sir, but we're going to take responsibility. I love your daughter and will do whatever it takes to support her and our child." Samantha intervened, trying to calm the situation. "We know it's a shock, and we're sorry for that, but we really need your support now more than ever." The discussions continued for some time, with each family expressing their fears and concerns, but also beginning to recognize the inevitability of the situation and the need to unite in support of the young couple. Plans started to take shape, from financial support to advice on dealing with early parenthood. As the night progressed, the initial atmosphere of shock and disapproval gradually gave way to reluctant acceptance. Though there were many worries and frequent uncertainties, it became clear that Ryan and Samantha were not alone. Their families, though initially shaken, were beginning to align to offer the necessary support. With acceptance emerging tentatively from the shadows of doubt, preparations for the arrival of the new family member began to take shape. But as the families adjusted to the new reality, an unexpected event was about to test the strength of this newly found unity. It was a time of change, and the waves beginning to form threatened to shake the foundations that had just started to strengthen. As winter gave way to spring, life seemed to be taking a more promising course. Ryan and Samantha, now navigating the turbulent waters of early pregnancy with the support of their families, gradually felt more prepared for the future. However, the fragility of life would soon become shockingly evident. On a damp spring afternoon, the couple decided to drive to the neighboring town for a routine medical appointment. Ryan was at the wheel, and Samantha, although visibly tired, chatted animatedly about the plans for the baby's room. "I was thinking of painting it green, maybe with some clouds and stars. What do you think, Ryan?" Samantha asked, her face lit up by the sun starting to break through the clouds. Ryan smiled, casting a quick glance at her before returning his attention to the road. "I think it will be perfect, Sam. Our little astronaut." The road was slippery due to the recent rain, and the fallen leaves from the trees created a colorful but treacherous carpet on the asphalt. As they progressed, the conversation was interrupted by a slight tension when Samantha noticed the car's speed increasing. "Ryan, could you slow down a bit? The road seems a little slippery," she said, her voice mixing concern with a slight tremor. "Sure, sorry, Sam. I'll slow down now," Ryan responded, adjusting the speed control. However, before he could fully reduce the speed, a sharp curve appeared ahead. Ryan turned the wheel, but the car skidded, the rear end swaying dangerously. "Samantha, hold on tight," Ryan shouted as he struggled to control the car. But it was too late. The vehicle skidded completely, veering off the road and crashing into a tree on Samantha's side. The sound of the impact was deafening, the ensuing silence even more so. Ryan, dazed and breathing heavily, turned to Samantha, who was unconscious, with visible injuries and blood staining her blouse. Sam, are you okay?" he screamed, panic overtaking his voice as he tried to wake her. With no response, and realizing the severity of the situation, Ryan immediately grabbed his phone and called for emergency services, his voice trembling as he relayed the information. "Please, hurry, there's been an accident. My girlfriend is hurt, she's pregnant." As the sirens echoed in the distance, growing closer, Ryan tried in vain to comfort Samantha, holding her cold hand. The paramedics arrived quickly, initiating first aid and preparing Samantha for urgent transfer to the hospital. As the ambulance drove away with Samantha, Ryan followed behind, his heart heavy with guilt and fear of the unknown. At the hospital, while waiting for news, Ryan's thoughts spun uncontrollably. The agonizing wait in the cold, sterile corridor seemed endless, each minute stretching into hours, until finally, Dr. Brian appeared, his somber expression foreshadowing the news Ryan dreaded. The unfolding of these tragic events would not only test Ryan and Samantha's resilience but also put into perspective the true difficulties and fragility of life, setting the stage for more revelations and challenges ahead. In the hospital, the sterile environment and the penetrating smell of antiseptic amplified the tension and anguish already hanging in the air. Ryan, pale and trembling, waited in the corridor, his eyes fixed on the closed door of the operating room where Samantha had been rushed. Every minute seemed to stretch into an eternity as he replayed the events that had led to this disastrous point. Finally, the door opened and Dr. Brian, with a somber expression, walked towards Ryan. Dressed in his white coat, the doctor seemed like the bearer of an inevitable fate, and Ryan felt his heart tighten in anticipation of the news to come. "Ryan," Dr. Brian began, his voice low and controlled, trying to soften the impact of his words. "We managed to save the baby. It was a difficult emergency surgery, but he is stable now." A complex mix of relief and impending grief filled Ryan's heart. "And Samantha?" he asked, his voice trembling with the hope for a miracle. The doctor hesitated, the weight of his task evident in his evasive gaze. "Unfortunately, despite all our efforts, Samantha did not survive her injuries," Dr. Brian revealed, the words falling like stones in the silence between them. Ryan's world seemed to crumble around him. He leaned against the cold wall, feeling as if the ground had been pulled from under his feet. "No, this can't be true," he murmured, more to himself than to the doctor. Dr. Brian placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "I'm very sorry, Ryan. We did everything we could." The next few hours were a blur of tears, condolences, and somber arrangements. Samantha's parents arrived soon after, and upon being informed of the tragic outcome, their grief quickly turned to anger and accusations. They confronted Ryan with furious glares and harsh words. "This is all your fault. If you had been more careful, our daughter would still be here." Samantha's father shouted, his face red with rage and sorrow. I didn't want this to happen," Ryan stammered, his words lost in his sobs. "I loved her. I love." The intense arguments and accusations continued, each word striking at Ryan's already broken heart. He felt completely alone, navigating a sea of grief and guilt, unable to find any solace in the turbulent waters of the tragedy. As the night wore on, the reality of the loss and future responsibilities began to settle in. Ryan knew that despite the immense void left by Samantha, he needed to gather strength not only for himself but for the child who now depended entirely on his strength and love. These heavy thoughts occupied Ryan's mind as he contemplated the difficult road ahead, marking not just the end of a tragic chapter, but also the beginning of a new phase of his life, where he would have to learn to be a father amid his grief. In the months following Samantha's tragic loss, Ryan faced a daily battle not only against grief but also against the relentless demands of single parenthood. Each day was a challenge, a journey of forced learning and adaptation, as he tried to understand the complex details of caring for a newborn. The small apartment that Ryan and Samantha had chosen to raise their son now resonated with the silence of her absence and the frequent cries of the baby, whom Ryan lovingly called Max. The nights were long and lonely, interrupted only by the necessary care that Max required. Changing diapers, preparing bottles in the middle of the night, and trying to soothe the baby who seemed to cry louder each night became Herculean tasks for Ryan, who could barely keep his eyes open from exhaustion. On a particularly difficult afternoon, after a sleepless night and a tiring workday, Ryan held Max in his arms, trying unsuccessfully to calm him. The baby's cries echoed through the apartment, a sound that seemed to penetrate every corner of his tired mind. "Sure, Max, please, Daddy's here," Ryan whispered, gently rocking the baby, but his eyes were heavy, and his mind involuntarily wandered to the moments he had shared with Samantha. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Amanda, who had come for a surprise visit, concerned about the well-being of her son and grandson. Upon entering, she found Ryan in a visible state of despair, with deep circles under his eyes, disheveled hair, and an expression of pure exhaustion. "Ryan, my dear, are you okay?" Amanda asked, quickly approaching to take Max from his arms. "I don't know, Mom. I really don't know," Ryan replied, his voice choked with emotion. "Everything is so hard without Samantha. I try to be a good father, but I feel like I'm failing." Amanda, with the experience of having raised a child and faced many difficult nights, looked at Ryan with compassion and love. "You're doing the best you can, Ryan. Being a parent is hard, especially in your circumstances. But you're not alone in this." They sat on the couch, Max now calmly asleep in Amanda's experienced arms. She continued, "We'll find a way to help more. You need rest and time for yourself, too. Let's think of a plan." The conversation with Amanda brought a small relief to Ryan, a glimpse of hope that maybe he could really do this with his family's support. They spent the next few hours discussing strategies, from the possibility of Amanda staying a few days a week to help, to finding a support group for single parents that Ryan could attend. Re-energized by this support network, Ryan began to feel that he could navigate the turbulent waters of parenthood despite the pain and fatigue that still plagued him. He was learning that even in the darkest moments, small rays of light could find their way through the clouds. With renewed determination and his mother's support, Ryan prepared to face the challenges ahead, knowing that each small step was progress. But as he adjusted to this new reality, the responsibilities continued to grow, and a new challenge loomed, ready to test his resilience and the depth of his commitment as a father. On that frigid winter night, the storm outside seemed a mere whisper compared to the turmoil unfolding inside Ryan's small apartment. With the walls echoing Max's inconsolable cries, Ryan felt each sob of his son as a blow to his own soul. Exhausted, the young father had reached the limit of his strength, his heart and mind shattered by the overwhelming responsibility. As Max finally fell asleep, exhausted, Ryan leaned back on the couch, his thoughts swirling in a vortex of despair and helplessness. In that moment of extreme vulnerability, he picked up the phone and dialed his parents' number. Amanda's voice came through on the other end, bringing a brief relief to his agony. "Mom, I need you to come. Please, Ryan's voice was broken, each word imbued with deep exhaustion. A few minutes later, Amanda and David arrived, alarmed and worried. They found Ryan crumbling under the weight of his exhaustion and anguish. The young father looked at them, his eyes red and swollen, and the words that followed were as shocking as they were painful. "I can't do this anymore," Ryan began, his voice trembling. I think the best thing for Max would be to go to an orphanage." Amanda's reaction was immediate and visceral. Without thinking, she raised her hand and slapped Ryan's face, more from a maternal instinct of protection than from anger. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stared at her son, horrified by his suggestion. "Ryan, how can you even think that?" Amanda exclaimed, her hands trembling as she covered her mouth, as if to take back the words she had just heard. David, though shocked, positioned himself between mother and son, his presence a pillar of calm. "Amanda, let's sit down and talk about this. Now is not the time for rash actions," he said, with a firm but comforting voice. They all sat down, the heavy silence broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. Ryan, still feeling the sting of the slap on his face, lowered his head, ashamed and defeated. "I'm so tired. I feel like I'm failing him. Failing Samantha. I don't know what to do anymore," Ryan confessed, tears starting to flow freely. Amanda, recovering from her initial impulse, took her son's hands in hers. "Ryan, being a parent is extremely difficult, especially in your circumstances. But giving up on Max is not the answer. We are here to help." David nodded, adding, "We'll find a solution together. Maybe professional help, more daily support. But giving up on Max is not an option." The ensuing conversation was long and filled with emotions. Slowly, Ryan began to feel a glimmer of hope as they discussed practical plans to ease his burden. Maybe, with the right support, he could face the responsibilities of parenthood without losing himself in the process. Comforted but still fragile, Ryan agreed to seek professional help and accept more support from his parents. As the storm outside calmed, giving way to a temporary truce, a firm decision was made inside the apartment. They would face the difficulties together, strengthened by the unwavering love of a united family. With the dawn bringing a new day, Ryan felt a little more prepared to face the challenges of parenthood, knowing he was no longer alone. However, as he adapted to this new reality, a new challenge was already beginning to loom on the horizon, ready to test the strength of his recent resolutions. That night, as Ryan's house still trembled under the weight of the recently discussed emotions, Amanda felt it was time to open her heart completely and reveal long-held secrets. With Ryan now a bit calmer and David nearby to offer support, she knew that the truth about Ryan's past needed to finally come to light. "Ryan," Amanda began, her voice wavering due to the emotional weight of the confession she was about to make. "There's something your father and I need to tell you. Something about your origins, something we've never had the courage to reveal before." Ryan looked at his mother, exhaustion and confusion in his eyes. "What is it, Mom? What haven't you told me?" Amanda took a deep breath, memories of the past stirring painfully within her. "When you were just a baby, you were left at our doorstep. We're not your biological parents, Ryan. We adopted you after your biological mother left you with us." Ryan felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "What?" The word barely escaped his lips, a whisper of incredulity and shock. "Yes," Amanda continued, tears beginning to stream down her face. "She left a letter with you. A letter that explained why she felt she couldn't take care of you. She was very young, scared, and thought giving you to someone who could love and care for you was the best thing she could do." David reached for Ryan's hand, trying to offer some comfort. "We've loved you since the moment we saw you, Ryan. You became our son instantly, and that has never changed, not for a second." Shaken to his core by the revelation, Ryan struggled to process the information. "Why did you never tell me this before?" Amanda wiped her tears, her voice trembling with each word. We were afraid of how it would affect you. And then, as you grew, it became harder to find the right moment. But now, seeing you with Max, we realized you had the right to know." His mother's words penetrated deeply, causing Ryan to reflect on his own struggles and responsibilities as a father. He thought about his instinctive reaction to want to give up on Max and how this news shed new light on his actions. I don't know what to say," Ryan murmured, emotions choking him. "I need some time to think about all this." Amanda and David nodded, understanding Ryan's need for space to digest the news. "We're here for whatever you need," David said. "We always will be." As Ryan retreated to the silence of his room, the weight of the revelation echoed in his mind, bringing with it a new perspective on his life, his origins, and the type of father he wanted to be. The truth about his past not only reconfigured his understanding of himself, but also reinforced the importance of his bond with Max. Recognizing the complexity of the choices made by his biological mother and now understanding the depth of his adoptive parents' love, Ryan began to find a path through the labyrinth of his emotions. However, as he contemplated these revelations, new complications were lurking, ready to test his newly strengthened resolve. After the shocking revelation about his origins, Ryan spent the night wide awake, tossing and turning as he struggled with his thoughts and emotions. The truth about his past had deeply shaken him, but it had also ignited a spark of determination within him. He realized he needed to take full responsibility for his life and Max's well-being. The next morning, as the sunrise filtered through the curtains, illuminating the familiar objects in his small apartment, Ryan felt as if he were seeing everything for the first time. Determined, he left his room and found his parents, Amanda and David, in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The air was heavy with silent anticipation. "Mom, Dad," Ryan began, his voice firmer than it had been in weeks. "I spent the night thinking about everything you told me. About my biological mother, the sacrifice she made, and everything you've done for me. I understand now more than ever the weight and value of family." Amanda looked at Ryan, her eyes still red from the previous night's tears, but now shining with a mix of concern and hope. "Ryan, we've always wanted the best for you. We knew this day would come, and we only hoped you could understand and accept your story." Ryan nodded, approaching and taking his parents' hands in his. "I understand, and I accept it. And I want you to know that I am committed to being the father Max needs me to be. Not just for him, but for myself too. I want to do for him what you did for me. I want to give him a home, love, and security." David placed his hand on Ryan's shoulder, a gesture of approval and support. "We're very proud of you, Ryan. Knowing that you're willing to face these challenges gives us great peace of mind." "And I want to do more," Ryan continued, taking a deep breath as determination grew within him. "I'm going to seek help, counseling, to better deal with all this, to be the best father I can be." Amanda smiled through her tears, pulling Ryan into a tight hug. "That's all we could ever hope for," she murmured, feeling immense relief and gratitude for her son's maturity. And so, with promises of change and renewed dedication, Ryan began to restructure his life. He sought out community resources, joined support groups for single parents, and started attending therapy sessions to help process his grief and the pressures of parenthood. But as Ryan took these positive steps, life, as always, had its own plans. New challenges were lurking, ready to test the strength of his promises and the depth of his regret. The road ahead would still be arduous, and the lessons learned that morning would be crucial in helping him face what was to come. Over the years, life had unfolded in ways Ryan could never have imagined. The difficulties that once seemed insurmountable had transformed into memories of a time of growth and learning. Now, a fully formed man, an experienced father, and a grateful son, Ryan walked slowly through the paths of a well-kept cemetery, his steps echoing in the solemn silence. It was an autumn morning, colorful leaves falling gently around him, creating a vibrant carpet that crunched under his feet. In his hand, Ryan held a carefully chosen bouquet of flowers, lilies and roses, Amanda's favorites. Arriving at the graves of Amanda and David, he knelt, placing the flowers in front of the well-preserved headstones. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad," Ryan began, his voice soft and laden with emotion. "It's strange, even after all these years, there's so much I wish I could tell you." He paused, looking at the inscriptions on the stones, feeling a wave of gratitude and longing. "Max is doing great. He started college this year. Can you believe it? He wants to be an engineer. And yes, he still has that smile of yours, Mom." Ryan sighed, the cool breeze lifting a few strands of his hair. "I came here to thank you again. For everything. Not just for adopting me or giving me a family, but for teaching me the value of love and sacrifice. Not a day goes by that I don't use those lessons." He picked up a small stone and placed it on David's headstone, a custom he had learned from his readings about traditions of mourning and respect. "I just hope I'm doing for Max what you did for me. I'm trying, I really am." As Ryan spoke, a family walked by, laughing and playing together, a living reminder of life's continuous cycle. He watched them for a moment, then turned his attention back to the headstones. "You know, I've taught Max about you. About how amazing you were. He feels like he knows you, from all the stories we've shared. And he's grateful too." Standing up, Ryan ran his hand over the headstone, wiping off a leaf that had fallen on it. "I have to go now, but I promise it won't be so long until my next visit. I love you both. Thank you for everything." With those words, Ryan gave one last look at the graves, each line carved in stone resonating deeply in his heart. He turned and began to walk back down the path he had come from, each step a testament to the lessons learned and the love received. As he walked away, reflecting on the past and everything he had learned, Ryan did not know that he would soon face new challenges. Challenges that would require all the wisdom and strength he had accumulated over the years, once again testing his ability to navigate the complexities of life and parenthood. After the serene and melancholic visit to the cemetery, Ryan returned home, carrying with him the memories and feelings rekindled at Amanda and David's graves. Upon arrival, the contrast between the cemetery's quietness and the warmth of home was immediate and comforting. The house was full of life, the familiar sounds of daily routine echoing through the walls he loved so much. Cynthia, his wife, was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She looked up as she heard the door close and gave Ryan a warm smile that always seemed to light up the room. "Une. How was it?" she asked, drying her hands with a dish towel. "It was good, Cynthia. It's always good to visit them, even if it's just to talk a bit," Ryan replied, hanging up his coat and walking over to her for a long hug. "I imagine," she said, returning the hug with a comforting squeeze. "Oh, before I forget, something strange happened today. A woman came by. I've never seen her before, and she asked to give this directly to you." Cynthia stepped back from the hug and handed him a pale, somewhat aged envelope that seemed to carry more than just paper. Ryan took the envelope with curiosity, turning it over in his hands. There was no name or address, just the word "urgent" written clearly and firmly on the front. "A woman, you said? What did she look like?" he asked, beginning to feel a mix of curiosity and slight anxiety. "I really don't know. She was wearing a hat and dark glasses. Very mysterious, you know. She said it was very important for you to read this as soon as possible," Cynthia explained, watching as Ryan examined the letter. Intrigued and a bit hesitant, Ryan opened the envelope. Inside, he found a handwritten letter, the lines filled with elegant but hurried penmanship. He began reading silently, and as the words unfolded before his eyes, his pale face reflected a mixture of surprise and confusion. "Cynthia, it's from someone from my past," Ryan murmured, his voice low and weighted with a new gravity. "She says she needs to talk to me, that it's about Max and something I need to know." Cynthia, sensing the change in Ryan's tone, moved closer, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly, ready to support him in whatever he decided. Ryan looked at her, certainty growing within him despite the uncertainty of the information. "I'm going to meet her, Cynthia. I need to find out what she means by this. It's about our son. I can't just ignore it. With the decision made, Ryan and Cynthia spent the rest of the evening discussing the possible implications of the mysterious letter. It was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one that promised to reveal secrets that could change everything once again. As they planned the meeting with the unknown woman, Ryan felt strengthened by Cynthia's presence by his side. Together, they would face whatever this new page in their life story held, united and determined to protect their family. But, as they prepared for this new journey, they could not foresee the challenges they would encounter, challenges that would test the strength of their bonds and the depth of their love. With the decision made to meet the mysterious woman, Ryan and Cynthia spent the following days in a state of anxious anticipation. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived, and Ryan was ready to discover what that enigmatic letter had to reveal about his past and his son. They arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in the city center, a discreet place where they could talk without interruptions. Arriving at the cafe, Ryan and Cynthia chose a table in the back, away from curious eyes. A few minutes later, a tall, middle-aged woman with an air of mystery and determination entered. She wore a long coat and dark glasses, which she removed as soon as she spotted the couple. Her eyes were a deep green, filled with untold stories. She approached slowly, hesitant but determined. "Ryan?" she asked, her voice soft and laden with emotion. "Yes, that's me." "And you must be the person who left the letter," Ryan responded, standing up to shake her hand. "Yes, my name is Charlotte." "We need to talk," said the woman, sitting down at the table and looking directly into Ryan's eyes. Cynthia, next to her husband, watched attentively, ready to offer her support. "Charlotte, you mentioned in the letter that you have something important to say about Max. What is so urgent?" Ryan asked, trying to control the anxiety threatening to overflow. Charlotte took a deep breath, hesitating before beginning. "I didn't know how to approach this, but the truth is, I am your aunt, Ryan, your biological mother's sister. I only learned about you recently, and upon discovering about Max, I knew I had to find you." Ryan was stunned, processing the information. "My aunt? How so? And what does this have to do with Max?" Charlotte took another envelope from her bag, handing it to Ryan. "This letter is from your biological mother. She wrote it many years ago but never had the courage to send it. When she passed away, I found it among her belongings. She wanted you to know the truth about your origin and about a legacy she left for Max." With trembling hands, Ryan opened the envelope and began to read the letter silently, the words unfolding before his eyes with an unbearable weight. The letter began with an apology, followed by explanations of why she had left him. Ryan's biological mother mentioned the deep love she felt for him, even from afar, and how she believed she was giving him a better chance by leaving him with Amanda and David. As Ryan read, tears began to stream down his face. The letter also mentioned an inheritance that had been left for Max, a financial security for the boy's future, which Ryan's biological mother hoped would help compensate for her absence in his and her grandson's life. "Charlotte, it's a lot to process," Ryan said, wiping away the tears. "I had no idea there was so much behind my story." Cynthia squeezed Ryan's hand, offering her silent support. "We'll face this together, Ryan. You're not alone." Charlotte, visibly emotional, smiled sadly. "I know it's a lot, but I wanted you to know that despite everything, your mother loved you deeply. And now, I am here to help in any way I can." Ryan nodded, feeling a mixture of sadness, relief, and gratitude. "Thank you, Charlotte. I really appreciate it." With the revelation complete and the letter read, Ryan felt that a new phase of his life was about to begin. The words of his biological mother brought painful but necessary clarity, and Charlotte's presence promised new familial support he never knew existed. As they stood to leave the cafe, Ryan looked at Charlotte, feeling more connected to his roots than ever. "Let's talk more, Charlotte. There's so much I want to know and share." "Absolutely, Ryan." We have all the time in the world, Charlotte replied with a warm smile. Back at home, Ryan felt stronger and more resolved than ever, ready to face the challenges that still lay ahead. With Cynthia by his side and now with Charlotte's support, he knew he could handle anything. And so, a new phase of his journey was about to begin, filled with hope and new family bonds that promised to transform their lives for the better. Over the years, the story of Ryan, Amanda, and David had transformed into a saga of love, sacrifice, and redemption. Now, with Charlotte by his side, Ryan felt he finally understood the full extent of the legacy his adoptive parents had built. Ryan was in the living room, holding the letter from his biological mother. He looked at Cynthia, who was by his side, offering constant support. Max, now a young adult, entered the room, curious about the letter his father was holding. "Dad, what are you reading?" Max asked, approaching his father with an inquisitive expression. Ryan smiled at his son, remembering how Amanda and David had treated each of his curiosities with patience and love. "It's a letter from your biological grandmother, Max. She wrote it many years ago, but I only received it recently." Max's eyes widened. "My biological grandmother? What did she say?" Ryan paused, feeling the weight of past generations upon him. "She told her story, about how she left me so I could have a better life. She also left something very special for you, a legacy." Max sat down, his eyes fixed on his father. "What legacy, Dad?" Ryan took a deep breath, gathering the strength to explain. "She left an inheritance for you, something she hoped would help secure your future. But more than that, she left a story of love and sacrifice, something she wanted you to know and cherish." Cynthia placed her hand on Ryan's shoulder, encouraging him to continue. "Max, your grandmother wanted you to know that despite all the hardships, you were always loved. And now, with Charlotte in our lives, we have the chance to honor that legacy in an even deeper way." Max looked at Ryan, his eyes shining with a mix of understanding and emotion. "I want to know more about her, about our family. Can we get to know Aunt Charlotte better?" Ryan nodded, feeling a wave of pride and gratitude. "Of course we can, son. Charlotte is part of our family now, and she has much to share about our past." The following days were filled with long conversations, shared stories, and new connections. Charlotte began to visit Ryan and Cynthia's home regularly, bringing old photos, memories, and a deep desire to connect with the nephew and grandson she had discovered. One afternoon, while everyone was gathered in the living room, Charlotte brought out a box of old photos and began telling stories from Ryan's childhood and the roots of his biological family. Max was fascinated, listening intently to every detail. "This one is your dad when he was a baby," Charlotte said, showing a photo of Ryan at just a few months old. "He was always a curious and lively boy." Ryan smiled, recalling the memories that had been stored away for so long. "And I owe it all to Amanda and David. They gave me a life full of love and opportunities." Charlotte nodded, touched by Ryan's words. "They were incredible people. Their sacrifice and the love they gave you will forever resonate in our lives." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the house, Ryan felt a deep peace. The story of his life, marked by challenges and blessings, was now complete with Charlotte's inclusion and the renewed connection to his past. "Max, do you remember what I always say about love and sacrifice?" Ryan asked, looking at his son. Max nodded. "That they are the most important things we can give and receive." "That's right," Ryan replied, smiling. "And now, you have even more history and love to carry with you, more reasons to value the family we have and honor those who came before us." The living room was filled with laughter and conversation, a living symbol of the legacy of love that Amanda and David had started. Ryan looked around, feeling incredibly grateful for each person present, each memory, and each promise for the future. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad," Ryan whispered to himself, knowing that Amanda and David, wherever they were, would be proud to see their legacy flourish through the generations. And so, the story of Ryan, Amanda, and David not only showcased true love but perpetuated it, resonating through the lives of those who loved them, showing that destiny, although sometimes cruel, can also be incredibly generous. The house was now not just full of people, but of stories, love, and a promise that this legacy would continue to thrive generation after generation.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.